The Jaguars have their guy, Liam Cohen.
Duval.
What the hell is even that?
There was a big need for head coach once the Jags moved on from Doug Peterson after a lack of success. And here we are. Coen was most recently the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers and is only 39 years old. Now he's tasked with what Urban Meyer and even Doug Peterson couldn't: get Trevor Lawrence to live up to his potential. Jacksonville went 4-13 and was awful last season. It was time to move on, and at some point, something had to give. Trevor was supposed to be a generational talent, and he hasn't been anything close to it. Now, it certainly doesn't help when the team around the quarterback isn't very good and the defense is absolutely terrible, but it's time to see if very awkward Liam Cohen can crack the code and help the Jaguars actually live up to expectations. But I wouldn't go holding your breath. Liam Cohen steps into a situation that's in dire need of fixing. An offense that was one of the worst in the league in 2024 that, fortunately enough for him, is paired with one of the worst defenses in the league. Now, there is an asterisk there, as Trevor Lawrence only started in 10 games, but even then, the Jags were 2-8 in his starts. So, safe to say, it's not going to be an easy path to success. But luckily for Cohen, he essentially gets to start from scratch with a new GM now that Trent Baalke is gone. But how did Cohen even get here in the first place? Liam Cohen grew up in Rhode Island and went to LaSalle Academy, where he actually got to play for his dad, Tim Cohen. He was really good in high school and was even the Rhode Island Gatorade Player of the Year before making the jump to the college level at UMass. Funny enough, while there, his roommate was actually Victor Cruz, who, safe to say, went on to be a good pro with the Giants and even won a Super Bowl. But Cohen was actually pretty good at UMass too, and owns a ton of school records and is in the UMass Hall of Fame now. After he finished college, Cohen did briefly play arena football for the Alabama Vipers, but then he got right into coaching, and the rest is history. He was the quarterback's coach at Brown, and then left to go to Rhode Island for a season before coming back to Brown. Then he made the jump to his alma mater, UMass, in 2014 under Mark Whipple, and landed at Maine in 2016, where he finally got the promotion up to offensive coordinator. In 2018, he had accepted an offer to be the offensive coordinator for new head coach Bob Chesney, but Cohen changed his mind and ended up becoming the assistant wide receivers coach for the Rams under Sean McVay. He later became the assistant quarterbacks coach and then left to be the offensive coordinator at Kentucky under Mark Stoops, where somehow he turned Will Levis into a borderline first-round pick. He then went back to the Rams to be the offensive coordinator again after Kevin O'Connell left to become the Minnesota Vikings head coach, only to go back to Kentucky in 2023. And then this past season, he was the offensive coordinator under Todd Bowles for the Buccaneers and had a ton of success with Baker Mayfield, enough to get him the Jaguars head coaching job. Yeah, this guy has been everywhere. Liam Cohen has had quite the journey to get to where he is today. He has been everywhere. He's jumped around more than any other coach I've seen in a while, and it's pretty impressive. It is strange to me that he's jumped around a lot, essentially back and forth to the same positions, like not really looking for promotions, just kind of hopping from place to place. But I guess at the very least, that shows that places want you back, and I guess that's a good thing. Now, before Tampa Bay, probably the most notable spots that Cohen was at that you would know is the LA Rams and Kentucky. Both were relatively interesting stints. Cohen's time in LA as the OC is pretty hard to decipher. The Rams weren't great. They went 5-12 that season. They were pretty bad, actually. They were the 27th best scoring offense in the league that season, but there's a reason for that. Matthew Stafford only started 9 games that season with a mix of John Wolford, Bryce Perkins, and funny enough, Baker Mayfield starting over that span. No, the Rams were not great while he was there, but there were so many things that went wrong that season, it's hard to take that and put it against him. Now, as for his stints at Kentucky, they were much better around his first time there than when he went back. His time with Will Levis, they were much better than he was his second time around, but I'd honestly say that Tampa is really where he found the most success he's had so far. He was great in Tampa, and Tampa was great with him. They had the 4th highest scoring offense in the league, behind only Detroit, Buffalo, and Baltimore. Pretty good company to be a part of. They had the 3rd most passing yards per game, 4th most rushing yards per game and the third most total yards per game. He was good in Tampa Bay. There's a reason why they wanted to retain him and are so mad that he went on to take the Jacksonville job. They were good with him, and more so than anything, the players seem to really like him. Now, the move to Jacksonville is a little bit messy. There's a whole timeline that I'm sure you've seen. The Buccaneers wanted to keep him around. They were going to make him the highest paid coordinator in the league. Coen still left. Coen went to Jacksonville, and it makes sense to an extent. He wants his shot at a head coach, and obviously the Buccaneers were good enough in 2024 to get him that opportunity. Baker Mayfield is out here getting people jobs. First Dave Canales and now Liam Cohen in back-to-back seasons. But it's going to be interesting to watch Liam Cohen's stint in Jacksonville, and hopefully he's good, because it's safe to say that the history of coaching in Jacksonville hasn't exactly been perfect. The Jaguars have had a long carousel of head coaches for a long time now. Tom Coughlin was the first ever head coach of the franchise in 1995 and won 2 division titles and got to the playoffs 4 times. Not to mention, he got to the AFC Championship game twice. Jack Del Rio was the head coach after him, and he ended up making the playoffs twice. That was a good start to the first 2 head coaches, and it's been a back and forth mess ever since. Mike Mularkey was the head coach in 2012 and won a cool 2-14 before he was fired after just 1 year. Then Gus Bradley was the head coach for almost 4 seasons and won just a grand total of 14 games. Doug Marrone, who took over as the interim when he got fired, ended up getting the job and took the Jags to the AFC Championship after winning the division in 2017. But he wasn't retained after the 2020 season, and the Jags made the switch to Urban Meyer, a true disaster. Luckily, it was short-lived. After a 2-11 start, he got fired. Finally, Doug Peterson, who did win a Super Bowl as the Eagles head coach, was hired in 2022 and went 22-29 over 3 seasons with a division title in the mix before he eventually got the can. The first 2 coaches in team history got to the playoffs a combined 6 times, and since, no coach has gotten to the playoffs more than once. Now, obviously, as somebody who was born in the year 2000, I was not alive for the beginning of the Tom Coughlin era, and frankly, I really wasn't watching the Jags until the Mike Mularkey era. But as far back as I can remember, the Jags coaching situation just hasn't been that great, barring that one season of Doug Marrone where they went to the AFC Championship and lost to my Pats. It really hasn't been pretty in Jacksonville. They've been hopping around and really trying to find the guy that's going to point them in the right direction. And it really all went downhill with the hiring of Urban Meyer. That was such a shit show. Urban Meyer was a disaster. If you're a Jags fan, you know this. If you're just a football fan, you know this. It was a disaster. So much drama, so much bullshit. He needed to go. And obviously that first season was so bad that it probably set Trevor Lawrence back a little bit. Now, you could only use that excuse for so long. That was 1 year, not even a full year of his NFL career. And it looked like he was going to be able to turn it around. After Urban Meyer was fired, the Jags go out and they hire Doug Peterson, who I thought was a great hire. I thought he was going to be able to come in, help this team, turn it around, and he kind of did year 1. Now, they weren't anything insane, but they did win their division and make it to the playoffs and even have a wild playoff victory in the wild card over the Chargers. But ever since, it's really been downhill. The Jags just haven't been able to figure it out. They haven't gotten better, and if anything, they've gotten worse. And you can only deal with that for so long, and eventually, we all knew that Doug Peterson was going to be the guy to get the finger pointed at. It's not going to be Trevor Lawrence at first, it's going to be Peterson, and Peterson got the boot. And so did Trent Baalke, which I'll say that probably should have happened a little bit earlier, but now it's going to be a fresh start. One that Trevor Lawrence and the Jags as a whole really need. Doug Peterson seemed to help Trevor turn it around after Urban Meyer, especially in that first year. But since, it's been downhill. They really need someone to come in and help fix all of these problems that this team has. They've been throwing money at the offensive line. They've been paying some specialty guys to come in and try to improve the roster around Trevor Lawrence, but it just hasn't been enough. They should have been better, but the team really wasn't great, especially this past season. Doug Peterson is out. Liam Cohen is in. It's a new era in Jacksonville. Let's just hope that it can go better than the last couple. The number one most important thing for any head coach is how they're going to develop the quarterback or work with him. And that's probably why Liam Cohen even got hired to be the Jags Jags head coach. Trevor Lawrence is the key to success, and simply put, they need more out of him. He had to deal with Urban Meyer, which surely did plenty of damage to his development, but he hasn't lived up to those generational expectations at all. He's not even lived up to any of the elite expectations. He's been okay, and even worse sometimes. He had a rocky 2024 with a shoulder injury that led to an AC joint sprain and a dirty hit that took him out too, so he ended up only playing in 10 games and had just 11 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Not great. His best year in the pros was just a 9-8 season where he had 25 touchdowns and 8 picks. If he can get back to that point, good, but he hasn't been good enough. And now he's on a 5-year, $275 million contract. So he needs to be better, but the Jags also got to get better at putting players around him. The offensive line isn't good, even with the money that they've put into it with guys like Brandon Sheriff and Mitch Morse, and the weapons also haven't been that great. Travis Etienne had a down year with only 500 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, but luckily there is a bright spot in Jacksonville. Brian Thomas has been incredible. He went with the 23rd pick in the first round and was incredible as a rookie with 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns. He has all the signs of being a future star. And as for the defense, oof, it was ugly and ugly often. They were horrendous. There are some good, consistent guys on the unit like Josh Hines-Allen and even Trayvon Walker who have turned into be really good players. Then you have guys like Tyson Campbell and Darnell Savage, some other notable names on the defense, but as an entire unit, they really do suck. Even with just how important fixing Trevor Lawrence is, the defense is truly the #1 thing that has to change. Now, I like Trevor Lawrence. I want to see him succeed, but I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that I've been like the biggest believer in him all time. Obviously, coming out of college, we were really only given things to believe in. This is a guy that was incredible in college and graded out as one of the greatest prospects ever. So coming into the league, the expectations were sky high, and he hasn't even scratched the surface of meeting them. There's a lot of reasons why, but Trevor Lawrence is also a culprit of his own problems to a certain extent. He's got to figure it out soon. The Jags are stuck with him. They paid him that $275 million contract, and now he's there. He is the franchise quarterback. Whether he's a good franchise quarterback or not, you paid him to be the guy, and he's going to need to show more if you want this team to succeed in the future. Now, do I think Trevor Lawrence could be better if they stacked the offensive line, threw in some better weapons in there? Absolutely. The Jags would be a much better offense. I've seen the Jacksonville Jaguars look like a competent offense before. They even battled it out with the Chiefs that same year that they went to the playoffs. They played them close. This is a team that can win if they can put it together. They just haven't quite yet. And they've gone through a lot of head coaching turnover to get to this point. This is going to be Trevor Lawrence's 3rd head coach in the NFL. You can only keep having this type of turnover and not have success from the quarterback position for so long. So hopefully in year 1 under Liam Cohen, Trevor Lawrence can A, stay healthy, and B, figure things out. Now, as for the rest of the offense, I really do believe in Brian Thomas. That guy is going to be a great wide receiver. Just look at how good he was in year 1 as a rookie. Travis Etienne did have a down year, but I expect him to bounce back, especially if they can improve that offensive line a little bit, but they need to continue building around Lawrence. They need to add more wide receiver help. They need to add more on the offensive line, and really more so than the offense to help Trevor Lawrence, that defense needs everything. That defense needs some milk because they were awful in 2024. That offense was awful, but the defense was even worse. For context, they were ranked as the 2nd worst defense in total defense, only ahead of the Carolina Panthers in 2024. And as for passing defense, they were the worst in the league in 2024. This was a bad unit. And while they do have some guys on that defense that can be good players and are good players, Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, Tyson Campbell, Darnell Savage, those names that I brought up a little bit before, there are names on this defense that can be good. They just really need to become a cohesive unit because they were awful this year. They had the worst pass defense and they were one of the worst total defenses in the league. So when it comes to the draft, they're going to have a lot to address. Luckily, they have a high pick. They're 5th overall. They're picking right behind the Patriots. There are going to be great players available at that spot. But regardless of how high you pick, you got to make the right decision. A lot of people think the Trayvon Walker pick from a few years back wasn't the right decision because Aiden Hutchinson was still on the board. I personally believe believe that to be true. I think Aiden Hutchinson is a better player than Trayvon Walker is. Now, with that being said, Trayvon Walker has turned into a great player. He's a good player. They didn't necessarily make the wrong choice. I just don't think that it was the right one. And they have the chance to do the exact same thing this time around. This is just not a good team. Simply put, even if Trevor Lawrence was healthy for the entire season, which I know he wasn't, I don't think the Jags would have been much better. When Trevor was starting, they went 2-8. It was ugly. Trevor Lawrence is in dire need of turning it around. And Liam Cohen had a ton of success with Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. But Coen is a Sean McVay guy. He's a guy who prides himself on being like Sean McVay. He spent some time with him, obviously, much like Kevin O'Connell, who's turned out to be a great head coach, and I'm sure the Jags are hoping that Coen can do the same. They want a young, smart, offensive-minded guy that's going to be able to come in there, boost the creativity, and more than anything, boost the production of this offense, because Lord knows they need it. The defense is probably a bigger problem than the offense, but Liam Cohen's an offensive guy. We got to wait to see how he fills out his roster to see how the other sides of the ball are going to be addressed. I, for one, am hopeful. I know the Duval clip is not necessarily the best look for Liam Cohen going into a new head coaching spot. He kind of looks like a goofball. He kind of looks like an idiot. And if they suck in year 1, year 2, no matter how long Jacksonville gives him, he is going to become a meme forever. I, for one, am hoping that Liam Cohen can turn the Jags around, specifically turn Trevor Lawrence around. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Is Liam Cohen the right hire? Is he a scumbag for leaving the Buccaneers? Let me know down below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.